in establishing a primary, secondary, tertiary, quaternary, and ad nauseam, what could be extracted as the primary anchor or most dominant element in that piece, translated into the ordering system? Did you get into the bit about what can be a simple metaphor? All right, if in fact architecture is what, frozen music, and if you know, if that's a piece of frozen music, unlike music, anything physical is subject to Shazam, gravity, right? So whether, forgetting about the orientation, whoops, sorry about that. This has a left and a right to my orientation, but that way it has a top and a bottom, or a base and a capital. But orientation is a constant that you don't have to think about, because this thing responds to gravity,
Right.
and it has, at least within the chutes that come out, a dominant vertical over a fragmented or segmented horizontal, and I'm looking as it would relate to this drawing. What's the impact of the force that's generated when the piece begins? Is it a fade in? It isn't, is it?
It's a little introduction.
Okay, it's a 1 and a 2 and a
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, does it fade out when it gets to the end? It doesn't.
No,
it stops, right?
It stops in a very tumultuous stop.
Fine, but if it's a fade in and a fade out, that's we'll say like a cuff on the pants. And if it's an abrupt beginning and an end, that's no cuff. That doesn't work too well. This shows an awareness and an emphasis of how you're going to articulate an ending, which just happens to be called a top, right? Or up, or whatever term. And it has its counterpoint. How important is that in the music? Counterpoint?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so he's got it here, doesn't he? So that the bass, or if we get into the Greek, the bass and the capital are counterpoints for one another. Or do they reprise one another at the two extremities? And they do. Then is there eccentrically in the piece an eccentric centroid? So that's represented there, right?
There's also an underlying rhythm that
Okay, and the underlying rhythm, it would seem to my eye,
In the
is
back.
presented by this stuff and the way it's repeated. So as an exercise, and even at this point, you're taking advantage of going to church regularly as a teenager, and good intuition. That's fine, whatever it takes to do the job. But each one of these, hopefully, you'll take this. You're going to show the folks, and you're going to have Christmas with the folks. Take this stuff home and say, here, Mom and Dad, is what I did for my first semester. They're going to say, what? But put it someplace where you can have an ongoing visual dialogue with it, because this thing is really ripe with residuals. Thesis, strategy, tactics, technique. You can nitpick these things to death at the technique. But as a strategy, would you say, because you two are much more familiar with the piece than I am, I know it vaguely, would you say that becomes a pretty good representation graphically? Music served its purpose to get you off the ground,
Yes.
and from there on it was improvised on your
Yes.
own.